Hello, everyone. So today I'm going to have a special guest called Salma, and just give me a second. I'm just trying to invite her. There we go. I think she's on, so just waiting for her to join. Hello, Salma.
Hey, Lubs, how are you?
Good, thanks, and you?
Good, thank you.
So I'm just going to wait for a minute or two, just for people to start joining. And then we will officially start where I can ask you all the questions. We have it. Okay, I see.
Perfect. Sounds good.
Awesome. So can you see some of the people that have started to join as well? I'm sure you
Yes.
know some of
Oh my
them.
gosh, Seedat Patel. Wow. How many years? Hey, Seedat. Hey, Nazir, I see you too.
Awesome. Ah, I see Ingela as
Oh,
well.
Ingela, hi.
Hi everyone. So we're just giving it a minute or two, just for people to start joining. Other than that, how's your day been?
Today's been kind of busy, I think, but in a good way, in a very good way. So,
Okay.
yeah, it's been a lot of online contact things. So, I I will not. I will definitely look forward to putting my feet up by the fire a little bit later today.
And I think this is also online as well. So one more online interaction,
Yeah,
and
but this
then
is a fun one. You know, like I'm not making decisions, which is cool.
yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think I see it's 3 minutes past. So I know that more people will start joining as we chat. But I'd rather start because I know that this hour is going to go by very quickly. So, for the people that have joined and for the people that will be watching afterwards, allow me to introduce my guest. So, welcome, Salma, to my Women Who Inspire series. I have personally picked you to be on here. You're someone that I personally admire as well. But I mean, let me actually explain to you what Salma has under her belt. So, Salma, you've been involved in everything. Salma's had her own consulting company. She's been a CEO at another company. She's currently a director at her current company. She's also sits or has sat on many boards as well. And in terms of her career achievements, I know that she began in the NPO space in 2009, and she started out as a campaigns manager and then was elected as the CEO or as the MD by the board by 2015, which is amazing. She's also at the current company, she was nominated for a Founders Award within 3 months of being employed there. And within 6 months of being employed there, she was actually promoted to a director role. And I can also say that having gone through her career history, there seems to be a pattern there where Salma gets employed for one thing and then within months she's doing a lot more. So I would love to explore that. But that's just the business world. Salma's also conquered the academic world, it looks like it as well. She graduated cum laude with her MBA at Stellenbosch University Business School. And then, as if that's not enough, she received a Top Achievers Award for the best research assignment in any master's degree. And I would love to touch on that too. And then she also won the USB Alumnus of the Year 2020 for social impact. So that's a lot under her belt. And I think this has been over the last 2 years. She's then also, now she's currently lecturing part-time at Stellenbosch University, the MBA students. So Sama, and I mean, in addition to that, she's also a mother of two, married as well. That is a lot. It took me a few minutes to actually mention some of your achievements, and I know it's not all of them. So how does one become, I mean, how do you achieve so much? Like, oh, talk to me about, your career journey.
So I think if I was kind of reflecting on a lot of it, when you and I spoke the last time, and I kind of
Mhm.
thought, so what has been that pattern? And when we did our MBA, we actually had
Mhm.
to do this really cool sort of self-reflective essay as part of the assignments. And it was a nice thing to kind of be able to look back and see what were the patterns, what kind of helped you. Because a lot of people say, oh, I got lucky,
Mhm.
and to some extent, there is an element of luck, but I think there's also an element of intention. And I think most people, it's about being open, I think, to just trying what's there and seeing what's accessible to you. So, I mean, an example I can give you, and I've shared this with you and with a few other people, is that my academic career, so the first time I stepped into a university was actually in 2015. So I don't have an undergrad. My high school, I have an O level, which is what you get at sort of grade 10 level. So it's not even matric, right?
Wow.
So I didn't do A level, which is not matric. So when I got to kind of being the CEO, I thought, okay, well, I have the practical knowledge. How do I then achieve the academic knowledge? Because I need the theory, etc. And for a lot of the development work that we were doing, they do actually look for the academic side. So for me, it was
Mhm.
like, okay, I need to get this piece of paper, but is any university going to accept me? And I took a chance. I just wrote to Stellenbosch University and I said, listen, I really like this course that you have on development finance.
Mhm.
I'm willing and able to learn, and I'll figure things out as I go through it. Would you be happy to accept me? And I was very surprised they said yes. So I think it is about just putting yourself out there, just understanding that you will be in the same position even if you get a no.
Mhm.
So you have nothing to lose. You're still going to be where you were, but you must just go for it. And I think that's kind of been the attitude or kind of the way I approach things from a career perspective, certainly from an academic perspective, is to just say, okay, well, let me try it and see what happens.
So I actually, you sort of almost quickly and almost downplayed the fact that you were CEO, you were in the working world, you became CEO without even having something equivalent to a matric. And
Yeah.
that in this kind of environment is very, very rare. And so I understand what you say when you said like you basically got the MBA or the qualification afterwards because you're seeing that you needed to get that piece of paper. But how does one actually, and I'm thinking of also people that don't have qualifications, like how does one actually put yourself out there and actually get noticed and get into the types of positions you got yourself into without having the qualification in a country that is obsessed with qualifications?
So that's actually a very interesting thing, and I think once again through the reflection, I think what came up for me is that there is such an element of trust in the relationships that you build with the organization. So with anyone in the organization. And I think that's kind of a cornerstone of how you progress in life, because when people trust you implicitly, when they feel that you are somebody that they can really rely on and somebody they can really count on and somebody they can trust with very sensitive stuff, they tend to put you in those positions of responsibility. And in some instances it's great because many people can rise up to it, and in some instances it's quite a challenge because you also need to have you need to really develop your leadership skills. You need to actually be quite active in being, and leadership skills is not something that's external to you. It's actually doing a lot of introspection into your own style, into what how it is that that you engage with other people. What is it that you bring into that interaction? And so it's like it's working on those skills, and then working on actually understanding the work. And I think, the thing I keep going back to is just being curiosity based. So I always laugh and I always tell my husband, I said, Afrikaans has this really nice phrase where it says, he always, I was telling him I just wanted to know what was happening in the organization. So I don't stay in my lane, right? So yes, I'm a campaigns manager, but what is the consulting team doing? And how does that tie into what I do? And what is that team doing? And how does that tie in? And once I get the big picture, there's these golden threads that you start sort of knitting together. And I think it's that element of kind of almost having that starts making people say, oh, but hang on, she has the information, she has the knowledge. How do we tap into that? And how do we bring that in a way into the organization where it really actually serves our purpose? And so there's this kind of mutual benefit, really, and that's what you're aiming for.
So I actually like that. So you say you're someone that won't stay in your lane. And because I know you personally, I can say that I think on a personal level as well, you don't stay in your lane either.
No, it's always been a challenge.
Yeah, Salma is very mischievous, I think. But I think that's sort of that curiosity and mischievousness that sort of gets you into these places where people actually trust you, and like you said, like showing your competence and showing that you can handle that responsibility. So I want to actually maybe touch on, you mentioned leadership, and if I mention all of your accolades, CEO, consultant, director, managing boards, I know that you mentor people as well. Those are all leadership type roles. And I'd like to, and I mean, there's a lot of young people as well on here. And even, I think that this is one of the things that, like many of the people that know you admire about you, is that you do display those types of, like this leadership figure. And I'd like to know sort of, you mentioned something about leadership also means being introspective. So what would you say, if somebody wants to actually be in a leadership position, or if somebody wants to be a better leader, they are currently in that position, what would you say they need to do to be a better leader or to become a leader?
So for me, I think leadership is actually about your connection to people. And it is about how you foster that, right? So it's not about managing, because people are unique, they're individuals, they have their strengths, they have areas where they need help. And so your connection to them is really understanding them holistically, and then figuring out how you can actually help them in those particular areas so that you're able to actually help them to grow and to achieve their best. And when you look at it from that perspective, and also, with many people, when they find that they're managing others or they're managing teams or whatever, it becomes a very external focus. And that's why I spoke very specifically about being introspective. So it's about going internally, and it is about, what is my role in this relationship with the person that I'm managing? What do I want to get out of them? How do I get them to a place where they are thriving so that they can actually be, achieve what they want to achieve, but also kind of, makes me achieve what I want them to do. And it's that kind of connection that you have. So it's fostering the trust. It's really understanding someone and really getting them to trust that you are there for them 100%. And I have left organizations, but I haven't left people. So even till today, part of the mentorship and part of the guidance, and I still have people that from previous companies that will reach out if they're contemplating a career change, if they're contemplating something. And it is about building that kind of trust-based relationship, which is quite rare, I think, in the world, because you don't necessarily find people that you can trust to that degree to say, I may not have connected with you for about 4 years, but I know that if I reach out to you, you will actually help me, or you'll guide me, or whatever it is. And I think it is about fostering that connection and about being genuine and authentic about it, you know. So I do deeply care about the people that I connect with. And I think that's kind of a cornerstone for me.
And I love that. I love that, saying about leadership being like for you, because that's sort of your interpretation. I mean, we've got many leaders and many types of leadership styles, but for you specifically, what's important to you is leadership is about your connection to people. And I think that I always sort of read and see these sayings where they say that that's the difference between a manager and a leader. Like a manager is sort of concerned with themselves, whereas a leader is concerned about the people. And that's sort of, anyone can sign off timesheets and leave and that, but like when you're sort of trying to foster relationships with the people and seeing how you can get the best out of them, I mean, that takes a lot more work, you know? And yeah, so if and that's actually quite interesting. And so have you, so I think what I would like to know then with in terms of this leadership, you spoke about introspection, also asking about, introspection in terms of how can you get the best out of people that you are managing. But in introspection in terms of yourself, like what sort of questions would you ask yourself as a leader if you want to be a good leader?
And so I think some of the key things is really just about, because a lot of things, a lot of situations and your reactions to situations, it's really about looking at that. And many times you find that those are, there's specific triggers that may have caused a kind of adverse reaction, and it's about visiting that. I think the introspection is about going to the dark places that you don't want to visit. Because if you don't face those, you're not going to be someone who's able to help others. You're not going to be someone who's able to actually connect at that level with others. So it does become really important to actually work on yourself first. So, what are the fears that I have, and how do I get to a point where those are not necessarily things that would drive my decision making. Since I'm not making decisions from a fear base, but I'm actually making decisions from a base of being open and curious about the world and kind of seeing, what comes up for me. And I think that's important, is to be able to foster that within yourself. And I think the other part of introspection is also to just be a lifelong learner. How do you keep challenging yourself to be better? Because it's one thing to say to others, I want you to be better, but how do you do for yourself as well? And it can come out in different ways. I mean, currently, so yes, I finished, I've done studying and whatever, and when I finished the MBA, I said to my husband, that's it, I'm not doing anything else. I'm actually just going to sit on the couch and, whatever. And I maybe did that for about a couple of months. And then I was like, yeah, I'm kind of bored now, so I think I should do something else, And then, so I decided to learn languages. So I started learning French, I'm picking it up again, and then, we'll see where that takes me and starting to move on. So it is about that. It's about challenging your brain. It's about challenging your learning. It's about just seeing how you can, find little goals, whether it's a physical challenge, whether it's a mental challenge, whatever it is, it's just how do you do that, and how do you kind of really kind of become a better person yourself.
So while you were talking as well, you were saying, okay, so you finished the MBA, you're bored now, but I wanted to question, like, you were at one point in your life, you were busy, you had two sons, well, you still have two sons, but I mean, you have two sons to manage. You were literally, I think, while you were doing your MBA, you were on an executive level at the company, so making huge decisions at the same time. And I'm sure you were still sitting on boards. How did you juggle all of that?
So I don't do it alone. That's the fantastic thing. So, I have to definitely give a huge shout out to my partner, to Fayad, because, you know, he is, I think, the perfect complement to me, in that, you know, I have this want to move, you know, maybe in academic circles or career-wise or whatever. He has none of that. He doesn't care. You know, he just wants to live a good life. He's comfortable with his work. He's comfortable in his space. You know, he's comfortable at home, those kind of things. And so I think we balance each other really well. And one of the first things we did very early in our relationship was kind of really look at not caring too much about gender roles. So really just who's the best fit for whatever it is that we need to do. So he is a much better person in terms of taking care of the home than I would ever be. Because, you know, that's not my vibe. But, you know,
that's how you and I connect.
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about. So, you know, whereas you know, and he's the gadget person and the, you know, IT person, and the, you know, he'll find out. So if I say, oh, I need a new phone, he'll come back and say this one for this reason and blah blah, and I don't have to do any of that research. And then when it comes to other decisions, you know, it's financial decisions or whatever it is, you know, then I'll be the person that takes that on. And so we just found this kind of groove. And I do think that if I didn't have him there to kind of really provide that support and to make sure that, you know, there was this comfortable space for the kids and for myself, it would have been a lot harder, a lot harder. I mean, he was phenomenal in the 2 years that I did the MBA. And just in, you know, I used to travel a lot, as you know, for my work as well. And he used to be here with the boys, you know, taking care of them. And I think for the boys as well, it's been quite a journey with them. They've kind of gotten to a point now. So Tariq's going to be 16 next week. Zafir's going to be 13. And so, you know, they're kind of old enough now to take care of themselves and to also take responsibility for their schooling, you know, which is great because it doesn't require much hands-on approach, just a bit of oversight, but that's fine because it's their responsibility. So I think we're in a sweet spot, which then does allow me a lot more leeway, I think, than when they were younger. So that helps a lot.
So that's great, and it's so important to have a supportive structure at home. And I love the fact that you challenged like the gender roles. And I want to know, was that challenging, or did you have a lot of flack from others for, you know, for challenging those gender norms? And how did you deal with it?
So I think yes, we did. You know, we got a lot of comments. We got a lot of and you know, my background is that, as you know, I come from an Indian family, so traditional roles are really important, right? And you know, it becomes something that maybe others would potentially mock, you know, but it requires that deep understanding. And, you know, I think we made a decision very early, is that, are we doing this for others? Are we doing it for ourselves? We're doing it for ourselves. And if it's in the best interest for us, then, you know, it doesn't matter what other people say, because if we're going to live our lives according to what other people think, we're going to be miserable and we're going to end up with something that doesn't make sense for us. So we decided to do things differently. And sometimes it hurt, you know, when you had those kind of judgments thrown your way, mostly because people didn't understand the context. But it was also realizing that people were speaking to us from their perspectives and their paradigms and their understanding. And so, you know, kind of just, you know, understanding better where they were coming from, but not really engaging it in a way that means I'm going to make life decisions that, you know, suit your perspective, but really saying, you know, I hear you, it's just not going to work for my family, and making the decisions accordingly. So I think it's just about making people feel heard, but really just forge your own path, because you do know what's good for you, right? And, you know, taking things on board. There may be some things they're telling you that are genuinely, you know, where you can say, oh, actually, that's a good idea. I hadn't thought about that. I will change, you know, what we're doing in a certain way. So being open to that. But at the end of the day, you know, it's just doing what feels right for you and for your family. I think that's the most important thing.
And I think that's such valuable advice, especially for people, like you mentioned, the Indian background and the pressures that come with that as well. And I mean, I'm also from that background as well. And I have to say that I do think that it's become easier over time, that, in terms of sharing the load, nowadays you do find a lot more, like the gender roles are being questioned, and people are sort of actually working together, and they don't see it as this is your work and this is my work. It's like we're in a partnership now. We're a team. How are we going to make this work? And I'm glad that, and I also think it's because of people like you questioning and challenging those norms, that it makes it easier for future generations to actually start, questioning whether, is this the best way to be living life or to be raising kids, so I really admire that, and I also understand some of the challenges that goes with challenging something that is the norm. So I think I think it's quite huge. So I applaud you for that.
Yeah. And I think, it's, I do want to give credit to my parents. I think definitely my parents, because they did, they did actually show me very young, or kind of give me the leeway from a very young age to basically make decisions, or kind of, do things differently if it felt right, and supported me. And so I think if I talk about family support, it's not just my immediate family. And I mean, many of my cousins are actually on the chat right now, listening to us right now. And I think, that's also been such a foundational thing for me, is the family support, because you really can't, I don't think you can move, through life with the kind of certainty and the, assurance that you have, or the confidence, if you don't have that kind of backing. So I know, like, for my family, they are, and these are like my cousins, my brothers, etc. They are actually phenomenal support, and they're always cheering you on. They're always kind of there for you. Always kind of, checking in on you, etc. So it's such a nice thing to be able to have that, and something that I definitely don't take for granted, because I realize just how precious that is, in the world today. But it's also realizing that they may be living a different life to what I am living as well, but they accept that, and they celebrate it. And there's something to be said to that. They may have, some of them may have a traditional lifestyle, but they're accepting and they're celebratory of what you do. And I think that is phenomenal.
And I also think that you, in turn, also, if they choose to live a different lifestyle, that you applaud them too and support them as well. So it works both ways.
Absolutely.
So I think that that's huge. Acceptance. We may not all. We may not all. Okay, so I just want to say. So I think this. I see some comments here, and I just don't want to miss them. So Yasmin Sheikh says she's very proud of you. I also see there was, I say HR Lab Los Angeles also says, hi, thank you for doing this live. Can't wait to learn. And great, guys. I encourage you to comment and to ask questions as well. This is not only a discussion between Salma and I. If you have any questions or any comments, please do send them through. But yes, Salma, I think you make a very, very big point about, this whole acceptance thing, and like the fact that we all can live different types, or choose to live different types of lives. But what is important is sort of showing our support to each other, even if we have chosen a different path, and that it's not actually a given that you get that. So, and also the fact that that's also something that contributes towards your success, being cheered on. I see another comment here from Engela Smith, and she says, so fortunate to call Salma the captain of my ship, an amazing woman, and I look up to her to lead and to guide me and my career. So Engela, those are lovely words to you, Salma. And I think
Thank you. Thanks, Angela.
that and I think I mean, we've worked together before at at some point, and I think I can sort of echo, I can understand some of these comments that have come through. And I also actually want to tell you that I was pleasantly surprised, but really, well, not surprised actually, but really enjoyed that when I posted, um, this when I posted the ad that I'm going to be interviewing you, immediately I got like four like different women, different from different backgrounds, different ages, all sort of commenting and saying, yes, Queen Salma, and very excited and saying that you deserve it. Um, and I mean, I know, I'm sorry, I know I'm putting you in a probably, I don't know whether you do get shy, but I am putting you in an awkward position. But I do want to comment on that because that's not, it's not, that's something very special about you that I have personally noticed is that there's so many, it doesn't matter whether it's the CEO or the receptionist or the cleaner or anyone, everyone like sort of looks up to you and everyone sort of sees you as that type of person. And it's really something I admire and I want to maybe, I know it's a bit awkward, but I also do want to sort of, touch on that and say like, what do you think it is about you that it's not, yes, you are, you're in this huge leadership position, but you're not actually, you don't actually just hang out with the leaders, if that makes sense. Well, I think that that's obviously part of it, but what do you think it is about you that that you managed to capture so many arts?
I think it's that connection, really, the people connection, because it's important to me, you know. So it's important to me to know you. It's important to me to know the cleaning staff at the same level in the company where I'm working. It's important to me to know the CEOs of the company at that same level, because they all have similar challenges. And I think the thing is understanding is that doesn't matter what the hierarchical structure looks like. People are people and they still have the same challenges no matter where they sit on that structure. And it's connecting with them just, as they are without that title or, whatever it is, that responsibility that they hold being the defining point of who they are, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we're multifaceted and it's really appreciating people for that. And I think for me, it's really just that. It's about the connection to the people. I think there's this fantastic phrase that young people say, I'm not here for a long time, but I'm here for a good time. And that's really my attitude. I don't expect to live very long, but I want to enjoy my life while I'm there. And I want to enjoy the people that I meet along the way. And so, how do we connect in that space? And I mean, you will know we have very inappropriate conversations, and I'm comfortable with that. We will have very strategic conversations, and I'm comfortable with that. And often those will happen in the same conversation, and that's fine for me. We can switch from one to the other or whatever it is. And so it's being comfortable with that. It's being comfortable with flaws, showing that to people, showing your vulnerability, sharing theirs. But it's really just holding the preciousness, I think, of the connection with people that is really important to me. And maybe people resonate with that. I think maybe that's potentially what I can think of as a reason.
And I think that that's lovely, and I think it is something that sort of is uniquely you as well. And I think that that's sort of what differentiates you between other leaders and why maybe people will come to you and confide in you and trust in you as well. And maybe that's also, that maybe it's the similar quality that gets you into those leadership positions as well, and being trusted with, with high profile information as well. So, but I think that that's something that's really great. And I think that that's one of the reasons why you are so successful in your space, wherever you go. So it's just sort of my 2 cents around that. But Salma, so I want to also steer a little bit away now from that. And I was actually just wondering something. So, I mean, CEO, sitting on boards and stuff, that's usually very dominated by males. And my question to you is, as a female, have you experienced any challenges around being in a male dominated environment? And can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Sure. So I think I would definitely say yes. I mean, there's been boards that I've been on, that I've been the only female on the board. It's only males. I'm the only female. And, it's been very interesting to try and, see how to navigate that, especially to get your voice kind of heard, because sometimes there's a perception, of the woman that's sitting there that may not necessarily be the right one. But I think, so what's been interesting for me, so I grew up in a household with 3 brothers. I don't have any sisters. And so it was quite a kind of male-dominated household. And, so my brothers will say to you, oh, she's fine. She can talk, at whatever male-dominated space, because she's been doing that almost since birth, And I do think that plays an element to it, because it does make you comfortable as a female to having that voice, even in a space that is, that lacks female kind of presence or representation. It was really interesting. I think what was more of a challenge for me, Lubna, wasn't really the gender thing, actually. It was when I came to Cape Town, it was more about the fact that Cape Town, the culture of work and the culture of actually has remained very much in the old almost apartheid structure type of way of being. And I think that was difficult to navigate. Not so much the gender side, but really kind of saying, okay, the decision making, almost like the power structures are sitting within a very small group of people. How do you navigate that space, as a foreign person coming in, because I'd come in from Zimbabwe. So as a foreign person coming in, who was very used to a different way of working. How do you bring that in, into the space? It wasn't a collaborative space. I think to a large degree it still isn't. It's a very competitive space, a very mistrustful space. And I can see where that comes from the history of South Africa and how things navigated here. But it's now bringing in this different perspective. So it's bringing in a perspective of now having worked in Zimbabwe, worked in a very different way, coming into Cape Town, and then how do I not almost assimilate, but still hold on to that uniqueness of the way I worked while I work in these spaces. And it was navigating that was quite tricky. But I mean, being on boards, I have had gender issues. I mean, there's, people always talk about how, there's, and it did actually happen to me, where we were looking at a potential, company strategy. I came up with a strategy that made sense for me because the current structure wasn't making sense. I kind of mapped it out, whatever it was, presented it, and I was told, I don't think you understand the way the organization works. This is not the structure that would fit us. And I was like, okay, great, no problem. I'll learn from that. Let's see how we actually do that. About 6 months later, there was a new chairperson of the board that came in, and he presented the exact same structure. So he'd come in, he was new, he presented the exact same structure, and everyone was so excited. It was wonderful, it was refreshing, it was the first time that they'd seen something like that. And you kind of sit there and you think, so for a minute I was like, did I communicate that the wrong way? Did they not get what I was saying? Because it's exactly the same thing, And then I revisited what I'd done, and I looked at it and I was like, this is no different. And so I thought I could leave it or I could challenge it, but challenge it from a place of curiosity. So
Okay.
not challenging it from a, how dare you,
Yeah.
right? So I sent the email and I said, I'm trying to understand because, a couple of months ago, this is what I presented. It's kind of a similar, the same structure. What was different about this
Mm-hmm.
to what I saw there? And it was awkward silence because they hadn't forgotten. But I think what was happening is there was a certain dynamic that was playing out. And then they weren't expecting to be called on it. And so, I invited the conversation. Let's have the conversation. But, one thing you need to understand is what I'm presenting is in the best interests of the organizations. Take everything else out of it. It's got nothing to do with me.
Mm-hmm.
But let's engage, in fact, as they say in sport, play the ball, not the person. Let's do that. And there was this kind of newfound, almost like respect. And I think that's also where it comes, if I go back to my childhood,
Mm-hmm.
is not stepping away from those conversations, not sitting back and, saying, oh, how could they, etc. But actually finding a way that feels right with you to still, engage with it and to let people know that you do have boundaries, that you do have value that you're going to actually hold on to and you're going to make them aware of it, So it's about just playing, just kind of seeing how that works for you. Some people would probably, kind of engage it full on. That's not my style. Mine is very much in dialogue, collaboration, openness, frankness, transparency. Let's see how we take it forward from there.
And then how did it actually pan out? Like at the end of that whole sort of, having that dialogue and stuff, were you better off?
So it was really interesting because the next meeting that we had, one of them spoke up and said, sorry, we just needed to also know that Salma had actually spoken about this before. At the time, we weren't ready for it. And so, Salma, we think you can work with the chairperson and the two of you can shape this together, whatever it is. And so, there was the acknowledgement, but I mean, it's that dialogue that gets you to the acknowledgement. And for you to not also, I think what was interesting for me was like, I didn't take it so personally.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, I was trying to figure out what the underlying agenda was more than anything else because I wanted to address that.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't take it as a personal attack. And once again, it's just, meeting people where they are and seeing how you can work through that with them. Yeah.
So I really do admire that because I think that, well, firstly, I think you were very brave to take it on as well. Also, maybe feeling that, if you were the only woman there as well, maybe feeling like alone, that, taking a chance because, you might not have anyone else backing you up. But you still chose to challenge it. And I think that the other thing that you did is you chose to challenge it, but then you also chose to challenge it with grace. Not sort of guns blazing, which I'm very familiar with, but actually sort of just going at it, yeah, like you said, from a curiosity perspective, and also, I think like at the end of it, you got to sort of work with the chairperson as well, and build that. So I think that that's really great, and I also just want to point out that it's not something that's easy. And the fact that you didn't take it personally as well, which is very easy to do, is a big thing. So I think that was very brave of you as well. Yeah.
I didn't feel very brave at the time, but I'm glad it actually worked out. I mean, it could have gone either way, but I think for me, it was just trying to, like I said, understand what that underlying agenda was.
Okay. I just want to go back to, we've actually only got 15 minutes left, and I didn't even touch the surface of what I wanted to chat about, but I want to also give people a chance to chat. And I see, so obviously these are Instagram names, so please excuse me if I mispronounce, but Zim Hack says, Salma is a truly remarkable leader. Sheila said, I'm not sure. I'm not sure if I can see her comment, but then there's Girl African Travel Canvas says, great interview, Salma. Great to hear from you, sharing your pearls of wisdom. Your light is definitely changing our society for the better. Well done. So that's.
Thank you, Judy Chicken.
And then just checking if there's any more. Okay. And then we've got 15 minutes. So I need to sort of think about what I can, what I can leave out. But I also just want to point out that what I've noticed from Zumak is okay, cool. Awesome. But what I do want to sort of also point out is the fact that that you won social impact. You won an award for social impact from the University of Stellenbosch. What does that mean? What did you do?
Social impact.
Yes. But I mean, like, people don't just win awards for social impact. Like, what is it? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So, so that was an interesting one. So I think, as you mentioned, I do sit on a couple of boards, and I think I've been quite intentional. So quite a lot of my work has looked at impact investing, and that has started from the time that I worked from the company where I was a campaigns manager and then became CEO. And impact investment is really looking at how you do financial investments that actually have a financial return, but also address some kind of social or environmental issue, challenge. And so an example of that would be the one that I love using is actually giving insurance to people who are living with HIV/AIDS. And so typically financial institutions don't give insurance to people because they are high risk, and so their financial modeling would completely throw the people out because they're high risk, and then it means that they're not able to access loans to buy houses or things like that. So it really kind of excludes them from society. And so there was this organization that started up their clients are exclusively those people living with HIV/AIDS, but to give you the insurance, what you have to do is make sure that you stay on antiretrovirals, which is going to prolong your life and is going to make sure that as a client of theirs, you have a very long life, and you carry on being a client. So they check on a regular basis. You've got to do the tests, and then the CD4 count goes to the company, and they keep a check on it. If you fall off your antiretrovirals, they call you. So it's got a back to care kind of model built into it, which is a fantastic model for a place like South Africa, where we have the highest HIV/AIDS rate in the world, right? And it's investments into those type of organizations that are actually really, filling a social. And you've got some that are focused on climate change. A lot of them are focused on women and poverty, etc. So what I do is I deliberately choose to sit on those boards where we make decisions around how you can actually turn African countries into places that attract that kind of investment, right? So investment that goes into a social environmental good. And that's something that I'm really passionate about, because we do need to have those kind of organizations, not only in South Africa, but across Africa and in most developing countries. So it's sitting on those boards, it's making those decisions. So the Aspen Network of Development Entrepreneurs is one of them. They look at small and growing businesses, typically owned by women, and they help them to become stronger so that they can invite investment. So it's looking at that. And then it's sitting on Impacted Africa, which looks at the kind of African impact investing ecosystem and how do you strengthen that. So I think it was for sitting in those kind of almost like influential positions, really, that resonated with the university. But I mean, that's kind of high level. It's also about the fact that, like you mentioned, mentoring young women in their careers, in their space. It's about sitting on. So at the time when I was actually sitting on the board, the governing bodies of inclusive schools. So those are schools that look at children with learning challenges and how do you incorporate them into the school community, but also provide support structures for them. So it's those different angles, that you kind of, and I know that my strength is strategy, right? So it's like, how do you help them from a strategic perspective? So how do you help them to focus on strengthening their networks and, and their stuff? So I think that was what the university has been tracking. And so someone at the university nominated, and then I got to hear about it, and it was very quite a surprise, but also very, very exciting, I must say.
And I think I'm very proud of you as well for that, and I think it's remarkable. And it's because we have people that care about these types of, or people that are in these positions that their lives are improved as well. If we don't have people like that, then, or people that can use their influence or their strengths sitting in those kinds of positions, then we don't necessarily have effective change that takes place. So I'm so proud of you. Well done on winning that award.
Thank you.
I think it's a lovely recognition, a little bit of recognition for for the big impact that you have. So well done, Salma.
Thank you. Yeah.
I see we have 8 minutes left, and Instagram is rude in that it will cut us after that 8 minutes. So I'm going to check if anyone else has any questions, but I think I feel like we need to have another chat at some point. So I feel like I'll probably need to have to invite you again. But let me see.
Perfectly fine for me.
Yeah, in between your boards and whatever you're going to be studying next and stuff. So I'll probably need to book you now. But you mentioned mentorship, and I wanted to understand from you, what is your idea of mentorship? Like, what is your definition of mentorship?
So I think of it as being a guide. So really, just and with a guide is that they point out interesting things to you, but they don't necessarily almost like over prescribe the journey. They'll take you on a path, or walk with you on a path that's really interesting. There's lots of things around. Your engagement on that journey is really important with the things you want to engage with. Guide can show you, like, oh, did you see that structure? This is the history behind it, etc. So it is very much in that vein. It's about being a guide for people, and it's about, walking with them on their journey. So that's the important thing. It's their journey, and you're walking with them, but you providing maybe insights that you've had from your experiences and from the life that you lived, that you can then share with them. And so for me, mentorship is really about understanding, what people's particular journeys are, and how do you walk with them on that journey, and what is it that they get from you in terms of these nuggets and these insights that your lived experience would have brought into that space for them.
Okay, so that's great. And that's that, because I know that that's something that that people. I mean, a lot of people also look up to you. So I know that you might have people that formally sort of that you mentor, but I think that in your space there are probably many people that look up to you informally and see you as a mentor figure as well. And I just thought, like, what is it? I just thought it was an interesting question to find out from you. What is your idea of being a good mentor? So that's really cool. Let me just check if there's any more questions. Okay. Okay. Great. So we've got like 5 minutes left, and I don't want to get into something big now. We'll get cut off. But my question to you is on the topic of mentors. Who has been your mentor figures?
So that's a good one. I mean, it varied over my life, I can definitely say. And I think the biggest mentors for me, or the most consistent mentors, have actually been my parents. So my late mom, I think I learned so much from her, and so much more after her passing. You know, it's when I started thinking about how to honor her legacy. I think a lot of her guidance, etc., came up really, really strongly for me, and so that's, you know, that's had, I would say, the biggest influence on my life, really. So that my parents definitely, a lot of my family members, I think, you know, in different ways, there's so many elements that I can look at. And then obviously, as you go through life, you engage with different people. Sometimes it's people that sit on boards. Sometimes it's just people who are, they have a certain something, you know, just something that they carry themselves through the world with, and it's something you want to connect with. And so, you know, it has been, and for me, I think that's more kind of related to the spiritual aspects. I wouldn't say that I'm a religious person by any stretch of, you know, of the word, but I am looking for kind of spiritual connection with my creator. And I think that's the thing that, you know, I've had many mentors where we've been able to engage in that sort of conversation. And then there's been, you know, mentors from a career perspective, with my children, you know, because they had some sort of not learning challenges, but just challenges that we went through. So, I mean, I always speak frankly about it. I don't mind mentioning it here. So my oldest one, he's on the autism spectrum, Asperger's, so very high functioning, but, you know, quirks. So you kind of had to learn how to walk through that. And then my younger one was diagnosed with ADHD. And so, you know, parenting mentors, you know, who taught me how to engage and connect with my children, given that they have a very different way of experiencing life to maybe the way I did when I was younger, or the kind of blueprint that I had when I thought I was going to be a parent. And I thought, okay, this is the thing, you know, this is the handbook, and applied to my kids. And then my kids were like, that's not going to work for us. Throw that out the window. You know, how do I find the information that's going to help me with that? So I think it really has depended on the context, and there have been many, but there's always these nuggets that, you know, these insights, this wisdom that you get, that kind of guides you on your journey. And I think that's been the most important thing, is seeking that out in your environment.
So I think what you're saying is also you've drawn from various people throughout your life for various parts of your life as well. It's not one person, but in the parenting aspect, you know, there are certain people, and then in other aspects you had, and really just taking, you know, something about him that you admire or that you feel like you can learn from.
Absolutely.
Okay, so it's been lovely. On that note, Salma, thank you so much for making time, and for being on this platform as well. I know that I've learned so much just in this 1 hour conversation. I mean, we sort of just went, you know, we just spoke about everything, and we sort of saw where the conversation went. And it was really, 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 I feel like I'm probably going to watch this again at some point. So thank you for that. And I'm sure everyone else, you know, there's so much lovely messages about you and about your leadership. And thank you so much for being one of those people, and to me as well. I really appreciate it.
Thanks so much, Livna. I've absolutely enjoyed this. And thank you everyone for joining. I mean, I saw a few of the names and a couple of the comments, and I really appreciate you guys taking the time to come and listen. And I think, looks, I mostly behaved myself sometimes.
Yeah, no, I was a bit worried, I won't lie. Like there was there's like a 2% that was like, you know, but then I was like, no, it's I was like, no, I'll give you the benefit of the doubt.
And then I'll unleash the mischievous side.
Yeah, that's an after party, so that's a different yeah. But you keep well, Salma, and thank you everyone for joining.
Thanks, Lubna. You take care. Bye, everyone.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
guys.
See you. Bye
Yes.
bye. Thank you for joining, everyone.